For a man named Rosie, there was nothing delicate or pretty about him. Roosevelt Rosie Dobbs marched up to the front porch of apartment 2B with his usual awkward gait, and had anyone been nearby, they might have heard him cursing under his breath, a string of obscenities that followed him like a shadow. With a ham-sized fist, Rosie hammered on the door. With each strike, he saw the face of the man who lived in 2B, a pretentious prick named Alfred Lawnbrook, the type who always thought he was better than anyone, even though he lived in a second-rate apartment in one of the worst parts of the city. He'd never paid his rent on time, always at least a week late for the 2 years he'd been living in the apartment. This time, 3 weeks had gone by, and Rosie was tired of it. If Lawnbrook didn't have his rent by the end of the day, Rosie was going to kick him out. It was Saturday, just after 9 in the morning. Lawnbrook's car was parked in its usual spot, so Rosie knew he was home. Still, despite the hammering, Al Lawnbrook did not answer the door. Rosie gave one last violent slam against the door with his fist, and then used his voice as well. "Lawnbrook, get your ass out here, and you best have your rent in your hand when you open the door." Rosie tried to be patient. He waited a full 10 seconds before he called out again, "Lawnbrook!" When there was still no answer, Rosie unhooked the huge ring of keys he carried on a carabiner on his hip. He thumbed expertly through them to the one labelled 2B. Without another warning, Rosie drove the key into the lock, turned the knob, and entered the apartment. "Alfred Lawnbrook, it's Rosie Dobbs, your landlord. You're 3 weeks late and—" But Rosie knew right away that he was not going to get an answer. There was a stillness and quiet about the place that let him know that Lawnbrook wasn't home. No, that's not quite it, Rosie thought. It's something else. Something feels off. Sort of stale and, well, wrong. Rosie took a few steps further into the apartment, stopping when he came to the centre of the living room. That's when he noticed the smell. At first, it reminded him of potatoes that had gone bad. But there was something different about it, something more subtle. "Lawnbrook!" he called out again. But this time there was a wave of fear in his voice. Again, there was no answer. Not that Rosie had been expecting one. He walked through the living room and peered into the kitchen, thinking maybe some food had been left out and started to spoil. But the kitchen was fairly clean and, because of its small size, it was evident that there was nothing amiss. "Call the cops," some wiser part of Rosie said. "You know something is wrong here, so call the cops and wash your hands of it." But curiosity is a hell of a drug, and Rosie was not able to turn away. He started down the hallway, and some sick intuition cast his eyes directly toward the bedroom door. Several steps down the hallway, the smell evolved into something nastier, and he knew right away what he was walking toward. But still, he could not stop now. He had to know, had to see. Al Lawnbrook's bedroom was in a mild state of disarray. A few items had been knocked from his nightstand. Wallet, book, framed picture. The plastic blinds in the window sat slightly askew, the bottom folds bent. And here the smell was worse. It wasn't overpowering, but it was certainly not something Rosie wanted to breathe in much longer. The bed was empty, and there was nothing to be seen in the space between the dresser and the wall. With a lump in his throat, Rosie turned to the closet. The door was closed, and that was somehow worse than the smell. Still, his morbid curiosity pushed him, and Rosie found himself heading to the closet.